Hi.
Hi, Rachelle.
Hey, Erica. Welcome to the Artful Leadership Interview Series.
I'm so excited to be here. I've been following it with lots of joy and anticipation.
Good. Well, it's been so fun for me to just follow this thread of all these different artists, leaders in our community, and have an opportunity to hear from each of you what you're doing, what you're excited about, what's challenging you, where you get your inspiration, and just kind of showcase the magic that you do behind the scenes that a lot of people don't see. So that's what we get to do today.
Lovely.
Hey. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about who you are and what you are up to these days.
Yes. So I am a dancer and a theater artist who is also an expressive arts practitioner. And sometimes I call myself an expressive arts therapist. It just depends on the day. Both terms suit me. I work full-time at Monarch, and I have one leg in the therapeutic dance world there and the other leg in expressive arts therapy. So I see big groups of kids, classrooms, K through 8, and then I also see kids one-on-one or in small groups for therapy. And I consider myself a teaching artist, and I try to work with as many organizations in San Diego as I can. So over the years, I've worked at a lot of different places, but right now I'm also a teaching artist with Transcendence and the Old Globe, and both of those organizations are pretty close to my heart. And I'm also the co-founder of my own business with my partner and wife, Sarah, and our business is called Yellowbird, and it's an expressive arts business, and it's almost 3 years old. So I consider myself all of those pieces.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the things I admire about you is how you kind of keep all those little pieces alive. And especially now with this pretty demanding job at Monarch School. I don't want to assume that everybody watching knows what that is, even though a lot of people are San Diego people. But so for those of you that don't know, Monarch is a very unique school for youth impacted by homelessness in downtown San Diego. And we have a pretty lively therapeutic arts program there. And all of our kids are in some sort of homeless situation when they enroll. We have K through 12, and we have about 250 to 280 kids at any time. And that is one of the things that Erika is working with is working with those youth who are in transition. So, so you had a big change in your professional life when you came to Monarch from a job at Arts for Learning. And I was just curious if you would like to talk a little bit about what that transition has been like, what brought you to a place of wanting to be at, one school full time and that population, and anything else you'd like to share about that transition.
Yeah, I might back it up a little bit and talk about how I got to Arts for Learning San Diego, because I feel like it was a bridge between these two parts of my life, two eras of my life. And I was working at Evoke Dance Theater as a dancer and as the outreach director, and then eventually as the artistic director. And I spent a good 10 years of my professional life there. And Evoke really shaped who I am as an artist and a human and a community member in San Diego. And I had some pretty pivotal moments there on many levels, but one pivotal moment was really what led me to graduate school in expressive arts therapy. And so a major departure in my life was leaving Evoke to go to grad school. And while I was in grad school, I supported myself by being a full-time teaching artist and, serving hundreds of kids all over San Diego through dance and theater and kind of doing the seeds of what I was going to study. I feel like I've always been an expressive arts practitioner my whole life. But then my third year of grad school came, and it was time to write a thesis. And I thought, why don't I take an administrative position where I can be in an office and be in an inspirational arts organization and go home at night and still have the energy to write my thesis. Because I thought, teaching dance all the time, I can barely keep my eyes open at night. I certainly can't write a thesis. What I didn't really know at the time was that Arts for Learning San Diego, which used to be called Young Audiences, was going to blossom into this huge kind of mega arts organization, nonprofit, that I was the programs director of. And it actually was way more stressful than being a full-time teaching artist, but I still wrote my thesis and kind of found these different parts of myself at Arts for Learning. I'm a Virgo. I love being organized. I can create systems, and I also was really passionate about piloting an expressive arts program at Arts for Learning, which we didn't have. And so I really got to grow my leadership, and I really got the eagle's eye view of teaching artistry in San Diego, which was really, really helpful. And then I stayed for 2 more years after grad school as I was trying to figure out what being an expressive arts practitioner would look like for me, and kind of fiddling around with how do you even start a business. My wife and I at the time were like looking up how to create your logo, or just really starting from the basics, So Arts for Learning was a great place to be in terms of being connected to the arts community, and also like trying to figure out where this was going to go. But it definitely reached a point where my spirit and my soul spoke up really loudly and clearly and said, you need to be in direct service again. And I think when I interviewed at Monarch, I said something that was true, but when I look back, I'm like, God, that must have sounded really cheesy. But I really felt like the kids at Monarch were like singing me to them, like calling me to them. And I definitely, I don't know how I heard it exactly, but they were just calling to me. And so I made the decision to leave Arts for Learning in excellent hands with our amazing ED, Tara Gravis, and to take a position at Monarch, which had kind of miraculously opened up, and which I credit you for carving the path at Monarch, and really, building a case through data and through kind of perseverance and passion to even be able to have a therapeutic arts team at Monarch in the way that we do. And so I've been at Monarch for probably 1 year and 2 months now, about 14 months.
Wow.
And it's just like flown by. And it's incredible. And basically the kids and I sing each other to each other every day. I think about them all the time. Yeah.
So what has it been like for you to go from, your teaching artist experience was being in all kinds of different school environments, right? And
Yes.
Also outside of schools. And what has it been like for you to be in such an intense sense of community at Monarch with a very specific population?
It's been a dream come true to what I would call narrow in on into a single school setting with it's a community of really diverse people, even if you could say it's one population. It's been amazing. It's been something that I think I've been longing for a really long time. I think there's a lot to be learned from spreading yourself really thin and wide, and I feel like I have a versatility and a flexibility and a nimbleness in my craft from being able to work with all these different organizations and people. And now what it's time for is a deepening of my ability as a practitioner, and like a sinking in, and kind of a grounding and centering into what I really stand for and what are my values as a practitioner. And Monarch is a really powerful place to do that, because I feel like it's the intersection of so many things that I care about in terms of social justice and socioeconomic diversity and people in need, and me learning from them and them learning from me. And so it's amazing to be there, and terrifying every day. I feel like I go to work to take risks and to stretch myself and to learn more and more about everything from boundaries to compassion to collaboration with staff and to elevating the youth voice. And I mean, you name it. And I feel like I'm being stretched in it.
Yeah. Yeah, I would imagine it's been an interesting shift to make from having a little bit more of an arts education focus in your background to now having very much a therapeutic focus. And even in your classes, you're not just going in there to teach choreography. Like there's so much more going on. And can you say a little bit more about that change?
Yeah, it's a pretty... In some ways, the change feels really seamless because at the heart of what I would call the dance standards, which is what you teach as a teaching artist, are the elements of the art form. And the elements of the art form are the same as an expressive arts practitioner. We're using the elements of art to, work with people on a social emotional level, on a healing level, on a restoration of the imagination level. And so there's this thing that both paths have in common. And it's sort of like the root of the art, the foundation of the art. And so in many ways, I feel like I get to bring that knowing into the room with me, but with a different take and with a different perspective. So I'm not looking to have the kids... I mean, in some ways, I'm looking for the kids to increase their dance skills, but I'm not looking for the best plie or the best point or who can jump the highest. So what I'm tracking in the work is really different. I'm tracking levels of confidence and self-esteem and the ability for them to feel and to name what they feel through the arts and a whole host of social emotional competencies. Which I also looked for as an educator, just not in the same way.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It feels similar and yet more connected with what I really care about, which is the cultivation of a whole human being and helping them fill up their life and not their life, helping them fill up their toolbox so that they can inhabit their life in a fuller way.
That's beautifully said.
Yeah.
So what are some of your favorite transformations that you're witnessing?
Oh my God. I just had to dial back the waterworks. Favorite transformations. I mean, gosh, there's just so many. There's my kinders who are, I've been very inspired by an educator here in town. Her name is Araceli Carrera, and she danced with me at Evoke, and I think she teaches over at High Tech Elementary, and she coined this phrase when I was working with her at Evoke called I Speak Dance. And I don't know if I think she came up with it, but it's something I use a lot and credit her for. And so even one of the things I work with my kinders first and second on is their understanding that dance is a language and a literacy all on its own. And to see them, to see kids who struggle developmentally with reading in the typical way and with articulating maybe in a typical way, to see them becoming really excited about learning this language of dance, and to walk down the hall and have them be like, hey, Miss Cricket, that's what they call me, Miss Cricket, and to show me these dance movements that they've been working on or thinking of or creating original dance movements or movements that we all know in the community, and to just see them gain this sense of themselves as communicators, using their bodies, embodied communicators, and to know that somehow, some way that ability to communicate and be literate in dance is going to translate for them, hopefully into their, just their full-fledged literacy as human beings. So I see those little transformations every day. Other transformations that I'm seeing, something I get very excited about, maybe because it wasn't my path as a dancer, is because what I loved as a dancer was being a dancer, being a performer, receiving choreography, having choreography put on me by a choreographer or an artistic director or the company director, whatever the role was, and to be a vessel. And that is very exciting. And I have dancers that I work with at Monarch who definitely want to be a vessel and who want to just express the passion they have for life through dances that I set on them. But I think the most exciting transformations are the students that I see who want to create, who want to be choreographers. And there's a lot of them. And that impresses me. There are so many students at Monarch who want to, I want to make a dance to this song, or I want to sing and dance to this song, or can we work on this dance together, me and these girls, can we come and see you and work on it? And to just really see them own that part of their, this phrase, don't consume, create, just is a phrase that comes into my mind all the time. Am I consuming or am I creating? Am I consuming or am I creating? And I really see my students choosing creating a lot, and that's very inspiring to me. And they invite their peers into that creation process with them. And there's all these really cool little tribes forming. And then I think some other things that I think are worth mentioning are, I really see students who struggle with their lives, like big emotional things in their lives, a parent in prison, or the loss of a sibling, or parents who just aren't there, or the separation of a sibling. I really see them understanding how arts can be a refuge for them and a place to escape is never a word I really love to use, even though I've escaped into art many times, but a place where they can actually dive in to their feelings and dive in to their images and dive into their longings. Regularly. So that's an exciting transformation. I feel like at Monarch we're creating a culture of creators and a culture of young people who understand that arts can be a container and a refuge and a vessel and a home and a tribe and a place that they can come to feel what they need to feel and say what they need to say and express and move forward and contact all that's within them in order to be the most resilient people they can be. Yeah. Well, that's really exciting.
And all those things that you're mentioning are just so important for youth who don't have a lot of choice in their lives, and where they've kind of born into these circumstances that are very limited. And for them to have that freedom to create and to look inside and honor what lives there and what shows up there, and then connect to others and share those experiences and then create something new together. And then I think some of my favorite moments in the last year of watching you create dance with the kids is then the beautiful gift that all of that gets to be when it's shared in the bigger community. When we went and performed at the First Presbyterian Church, or when they do their showcases for the school and community, and it's just such a wonderful loop that happens.
Yeah, and I think Monarch has probably cultivated a lot of beautiful partnerships. For me, I feel like I'm just in the beginning stages of who are all the communities that we can connect with at Monarch and have these creative exchanges. And I'm glad you said what you said about choice, because I feel like something I really try to highlight with my students as often as I can is that doing art with me or making dance with me or being in the dance room, it's all about choices. being an artist is all about choices, and to really highlight that for them, especially if they feel like I don't have a lot of choices in my life right now. They have thousands of choices in front of them artistically, at least in our expressive arts rooms. And I think that that's a really important part of agency and connecting them with that sense of choice making and confidence in that.
Yeah. And that sort of real-time live experience of that. And then as they grow with us, they can start to apply those skills or that way of being in other areas of their lives.
Exactly.
That's this generative quality of like, oh, I can have choice. I can have a voice. I can dream. I can create. And I can have a community to do that with.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really healing things for kids. And also just empowering for any kids, like it's really important.
Right. And I feel like it's our job as expressive arts practitioners to point out the parallels of, we make these choices in art, and then we also make these choices in our classroom and in our school culture and in our family and then in our bigger community and in our life. And if you can do it here, you can do it there. And as they go through the challenges of art making those parallels as well. Yeah.
That's so awesome. So you've already mentioned one other artist leader that inspires you with, will you say her name one more time? Araceli
Carrera.
Okay.
Yes.
And are there any other artists or folks who are doing work in San Diego that inspire you that you would love to give a little shout out to?
The artists that I feel like have been on this journey with me in the same era and time are people like Catherine Corral of Transcendence and Jennifer Oliver at A Step Beyond, and I mentioned Araceli. I think, and then I sort of think of like, and I hope they don't feel upset that I put it this way, but I think of like, who are my elders in the community? And they, doesn't mean they're old, but they're just a step above me, like doing work for a lot longer. And so I think of people like Meryl Goldberg, who runs Centro Artes up at Cal State San Marcos, and just really has done such amazing things with arts education in San Diego and access to arts. And she's the one who's made those little cards that I forget what they're called in this moment, but they have all this data and research on them about why arts and arts education is helpful. And so she's been one of my influencers. And Lynn Suschultz over at Art Produce and Stone Paper Scissors, she's been a major influence for me. She used to be a huge supporter of Evoke when I danced there, and we would do a lot of partnerships with her. And I think just her commitment to communities, all kinds of communities, the refugee community, communities of color, youth communities, and getting them into her studio and elevating their voices through her studio that she has out front and through her community programs. So she really comes to mind. And then we've been doing this project with her and Bhavna Mehta, I think is her last name, over at Monarch called Our Body is a Home, and it's a CAC funded program. And so Bhavna has been definitely a new inspiration for me. And I've been thinking about this body as a home concept quite a bit. Yeah. I think in terms of my theater and dance background, Moxie Theater has been a huge influence for me. It used to be run by Delicia and is now run by Jennifer, but they produce theater really with the intention of broadening like the female voice in theater. And so they produce a ton of female playwrights and plays directed by women and plays that have really juicy roles for women outside of the norm. And so Moxie has been a pretty good influence for me. And BK Soul, who partners a lot with Collective Purpose, but I think they're all just now BK Soul. They've been a big influence for me too, just hip hop with intention and spoken word that has just spoken to me at such a deep level. So they really came to mind. And I have to mention Melissa Grove and Ladies Rock Camp, because that was pretty transformational for me. I just did it this past weekend with my mom, and Veronica May was my band coach, and that was like such a beautiful synchronicity, I feel like. And we are in the tiniest, smallest start of conversations about a potential collaboration of maybe bringing some dance to her music. I don't know if it's video. I don't even know. We haven't even started the conversation, but there's some seeds there. So shout out to Veronica May and her amazing music, and its connection to just this time and this era, and activism and being connected with hope. So that's a big shout out. Another major source of inspiration for me has been Shakti Rising.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a nonprofit here in San Diego, but they also have sister homes in, I think, 5 or 6 different states. And that, you know, Shakti, it's hard to sum up what Shakti stands for, but I would say it's a social change organization that's dedicated to women and girls, and that has a very strong business model that that is focused on the feminine and the feminine way of doing things. And that's really interesting to me. I mean, years and years and years ago, I never would have thought about a masculine versus feminine way of leading a business. And I understand now, kind of more through an embodied way, what that means just through my work there. I did an apprenticeship there for 2 years, and I was a house staff there for 2 years, and have volunteered there just over the years. And, you know, their take on living seasonally and really honoring our bodies and nature as a lens through which to look through, primarily, has been very inspiring to me, and it's definitely inspired my business with Sarah Yellowbird.
Yeah.
Something we talk about a lot. Are we doing things seasonally? Are we paying attention to the cycles and rhythms in our bodies and in our community and in our world? And how can our expressive arts offerings really honor that way of being?
There's something really lovely about honoring the feminine, and what are the natural ways that we do things that are unique and really work, and in these other ways, and especially when it comes to doing work that's heart-centered and healing for the world, you know, like that comes from such a sort of feminine origin in a sense. So.
Yeah, I feel very grateful that my wife and my business partner, Sarah, it comes very natural to her, and she's very invested in creating a business from that place. She really holds that in our business. And
so I'm curious, and I'm gonna kind of jump back to working with youth, and I'm curious if working with youth somehow keeps you connected to your sort of art origin story. Like, what is the thing that, you know, I feel like most of us have some sort of connection or story of why art became meaningful to us as young people. And so I'm very curious what that story was for you, and how it is to work with youth, and if that has a relationship to kind of keeping that alive.
That's a great question, and I really like the way you phrased it. I feel like I want to write that down and ask all my friends. Yeah, my art origin story. So I would say that working with youth keeps me connected to a lot of things. It keeps me connected to my youthful spirit. It keeps me connected to my body and to joy and buoyancy and humor. Humor, definitely. Yeah, humor. I'm so serious otherwise, but when I'm around youth, I'm just like, lit up. My artist origin story starts, you know, either in my living room or in gymnastics. I did 2 things the most as a kid. You know, when you would play make-believe, which I played make-believe all the time. I was either a teacher or I was a dancer.
Mm-hmm.
But I wasn't even in dance at the time, but I would walk into the studio and I would be the new dancer in town, and I would just wow everybody with my moves and become one of them. Or I'd be, lining up my stuffed animals, and I'd be teaching, and they would be my classroom. And so I did those two things the most. But somehow I got enrolled in gymnastics as a kid, and I really loved it. I really loved floor the most because floor is the most like dance.
Yeah.
But right around 10, a few things happened to me regarding my body, some of which I won't talk about. But one thing that happened that I'll talk about was I broke my leg in gymnastics, and I was devastated. I had really just discovered that I was kind of moving to dance. Like we had this like floor routine to Ode to Joy. And whenever I hear Ode to Joy, I just remember that routine, and I couldn't perform it because of the broken leg. And I never went back. I never went back to gymnastics after that incident. And there was really no one in my life who guided me through that challenge and guided me back to my body and back to either gymnastics or dance or something that gave me this back. Because from that point on, I really dissociated and really became quite distant from my body until much later when I started dancing in high school and college and sort of got reacquainted. And so in many ways, my work with kids is like a healing balm for that era. And I can really see myself being their advocate, even if they don't like dance, naturally, or are a little bit afraid of it, or are shy, or are this or that. I'm their cheerleader no matter what. I'm that person who's like, you got this, you can do this, let's do this, I'm in it with you, let's just wiggle on the floor, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so I think it's connected. I never really thought about it in quite that way, but I think it's connected with that. Like, I want to be a champion for the body and for making sure that kids feel at home in their body as much as they can. That word belonging comes up for me quite frequently as a practitioner. Do people feel like they belong to their bodies? I mean, much less even love them or appreciate them, but like, do we even feel connected to them? Do we even know the capacity to which they can move?
So how did you then kind of make your way back to dance, or to dance after gymnastics, and then kind of pursue this whole life that is based in dance movement?
I know. I had a pretty significant period of time where I didn't do anything movementy. I found theater instead. So theater became my bridge. So I did a lot of plays, in junior high and in high school. And I can't quite remember, but somehow when I lived in Virginia and was in high school, I made my way, I don't even know how, over to Buffa's dance studio, where they did some kind of version of competition dance. And I hated it, but I was so happy to be dancing. But I knew that wasn't like my thing. I was in like some jazz routine with like costumes that would light up with black light and probably jazz hands. And I was both miserable and elated at the same time, like knowing I needed to be dancing, but knowing that this wasn't the place. So
quite right.
right. But I found my way back, to my body. And then when I went to Sarah Lawrence, that's where I really found my niche in modern dance at that time, and all of the amazing teachers there, and with a bunch of just really radical, like innovative people, the type of people who go to Sarah Lawrence. And I was like, this is it. This is what I want. So I would say I was a late dance bloomer, and I think a lot of people who not love dance the most, but a lot of people that I've met who like really like spend their whole lives devoted to dance often came to it a little bit later than maybe like a typical like professional ballerina or something like that. Yeah. So I'm glad I came to it when I did, even though I feel like I maybe missed something. But it's part of my healing journey. It's part of my story. that separation from my body has influenced who I am as a practitioner and sort of what I see and who I can work with.
Right. And the gift that you give as a result of that.
Yeah.
That.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of my favorite questions to ask people is like, so what is your artist doing now? Like, what are you doing to feed and grow that artist self nowadays?
So I feel like my artist really lives on a spectrum. I really try to live my life as creatively and artistically as I can, down from like, my journal and how it looks, to the way my house is decorated, to how I wrap Christmas presents. I want it to be really embedded with my artistry and my voice from that little seed. To the opposite end of the spectrum, which are maybe like the artistic projects I'm doing, or what my artistry looks like out in the community. And so every year for my birthday, I pick something to turn into, something I want to draw. And this year for my birthday, I chose space. And I didn't quite know what that meant at the time, but for me, what it's really been about is creating a lot of space for myself, time and space to kind of take a break from my normal routine and my big push. And so I actually feel like I'm at a really exciting place right now where I might be reinventing myself, or maybe just weaving things together in a different way than I have been. And I think this collaboration with Veronica May, if it happens, could be a great example of that. But right now my artistry shows up in the playback troupe that I'm part of, playback theater, and it shows up in the dances that I make for my students at Monarch, and it shows up in my writing right now. I'm doing a lot of writing, and I'm working on I think 2 books, but I'm not sure. Maybe they're all one, but I have 2 different threads going, and one is about expressive arts and education, and one is about something that's a lot more mysterious to name, but has something to do with storytelling and forgiveness, and a project that I did back in 2010 and 2012 based on a book called In the Time of the Butterflies, and sort of like how that experience and show has stayed with me and is living through me even now. Yeah. So a lot of my artistry is showing up in my writing practice. I have a daily writing practice that I'm attempting to do every day. I guess I can't call it daily if it's not daily, but it's mostly every day.
Mostly daily.
Mostly daily. Trying to think of how else my artistry lives. I think that's about it right now.
Range.
Yeah, I was listening to Ani DeFranco today, like her old school songs. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I think I need to do some dances to these songs and get some women in with me to do that. Yeah, it's like bringing back this old era of, I don't know, women and the body and this political climate, and the time feels ripe for some dance projects to her music. So we'll see. Yeah.
Cool. All right. So as we kind of wrap up our conversation from today, is there anything that you are longing for from the Artful leadership community, like the people who are watching these videos and who are kind of a part of this project? Anybody who's kind of exposed to this series, is there anything that you need from the community that you would like them to follow up with you about?
You saved the hardest question for last. A few things come to mind. I think Monarch is a pretty powerful platform for artists who are serious about working with this population to come to, and I definitely want to be a pivotal person at Monarch to help, like you are, to help connect artists in a meaningful, consistent, not provocative, but like it. I think Monarch really needs the presence and spirit of artists. I mean, we all do. The whole world does. But Monarch is just a great place to do that. So if you feel a calling to work with this community, reach out, to me or to anyone at Monarch. So that would be something. I think another thing that came to mind right when you asked the question has something to do with friendship. And I have a deep longing to reignite friendship, just the concept of friendship in my life. And, some people are really great at finding the balance between being an artist and being a full-time professional and being a friend. I am not good at that balance. And I really feel like it's missing. And so I think, I don't know, maybe if there's anyone out there in the community who also feels like friendship is something they want to reignite and spend time on, I would be a great person to reach out to because I have a real longing for that right now. And then the last thing I want to mention is this idea of collaboration. So I've always been part of really amazing places that have in-house collaboration. I mean, everything we did at Evoke was often a collaboration. Every project I feel like I've ever done is a collaboration. And yet it's still hard for me. And I think collaboration is hard for a lot of people. And I feel I'm part of a collaboration right now through my business Yellowbird with a professional in the community named Jennifer Seymour, and it's called Tending to the Whole Self. And there's a group of us practitioners coming together kind of under her vision around neurodiversity and all the different ways we can think about the body and healing. And we're putting on a retreat in April with all these different workshops and perspectives on this topic. And I think it's been really invigorating to be part of this concept of these different, I mean, the group of people she's brought together are very different from each other and also very similar. And so I think that level of collaboration where we maybe work outside of our traditional box and we reach out to people who maybe believe in the same thing but are approaching it a little bit differently and putting things together for the community that promote this larger ideal but through a lot of different ways. That's pretty healing for our community right now. It really lets go of like the binary and the right and the wrong and the black and the white, and it's just like, let's just all be in this gray together. Yeah. And I think we really need more of that. So I would like to magnetize more projects like that.
Very cool. Yeah, and what I'm kind of doing with this series too is just to find out, like, I feel like we think so much about the outcomes for our youth and, what changes we want to have happen for our youth, and yet we sometimes forget to sort of tend to the people behind the work. And, the artists that are behind all of this beautiful work are very special people, and it takes a very special human to serve in these very creative ways in these often super challenging settings. And so I'm doing kind of like a little study on like, what are these artists looking for and what are they needing, and how can I help generate that through my like little Artful leadership initiative and through connecting people through this interview series. And then whether we create events or whether we create a Facebook group or we create a retreat or a thing, like what are the things that people are longing for, just as humans, as artists, in this work together. So I love hearing the different things that people are longing for, and there are some nice threads. So I think it will come out of that.
Well, now that you've said that, I have one more thing to add.
Okay.
That helped me see the question in a different way, and this like desire bubbled up when you were talking, and like I really have a longing for our community. And hey, if this exists already, please just tell me. But I would love to be part of a women's dance collective, or a women's performance collective that has maybe different art forms. So let me broaden it out a little bit. Where there's like a rotation of leadership, a rotation of choreographers or visionaries who have an idea for a performance or a project or a show, and that it's not just one person at the helm, but rather a more just a force of people who want to perform and make art together and rotate the artistic voice that's leading that. And I especially have that for hip hop. I have a deep love for hip hop, and it has really broadened my sense of who I am and who I can be in this body and in this time. And yet I don't always feel satisfied with the dance that I see in hip hop or even some of the music. And I think I just need to get exposed to more that's out there. But I have a real desire for that. So if there are people out there who are part of something like this, I would love to know about it.
All right. Well, we'll put that request out there.
Thank you.
One of my curiosities is how can we also, as women, work with men and kind of bring things together in and changing ways. So, so it's just a fun conversation to continue.
Yeah.
Any last message or inspiration or I don't know, final words for folks who stuck with us all the way?
Thank you for sticking with us.
Yes.
Not really. I think, I sort of mentioned that one of my ongoing threads is just the body as a place to be in. And a lot of my teachers have said things like, our body is our community, or our body is the closest to nature we'll ever get, or like Bhavna, the body is a home. And so, yeah, just maybe inviting people to think about the body and what their relationship to their body is. And I'd love to know, if people want to comment on this interview, like how they think of their bodies.
Yeah.
That would be really interesting to me.
Yeah. Cool. Well, we can both put that out there once it's edited and we get it out to the community.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this. I feel really honored, and I really cherish you and everything that you're doing and everything that you stand for. And I find it really moving, and I'm excited.
Thank you so much. I feel really honored to have once I started to kind of make my list of how many incredible artist leaders I have in my community, and it's such a pleasure to have this kind of conversation with each of you and show the world your beauty in this kind of dialogue. So it goes both ways.
Thank you.